Okay, so welcome back everybody, and this video is basically going to be about me stitching all the videos I have on videos that I do series on. For example, I did a series of videos on rooting the fig cuttings, and some people have been complaining a little bit, and they can't find part 6, and where does it begin, where does it end, what was the first part, what did they end up with, what's the final result, do you still got... So I've decided to take all those videos in that series and stitch them into one video, which is what you're seeing here. And that way you can watch from beginning to end the whole series of videos. So basically, it's just going to be videos stitched from top to bottom all the way across. And that way you're not having to hunt around for, the first video, the second video, third video. You're not hunting around for any of that. So hopefully this will solve that problem. I did create playlists for each one of these topics, hoping that would be a solution to having part 1, part 2, part 3. But it doesn't seem like that's very helpful. People still tend to have a hard time finding a playlist. I got like 40 playlists, so now they got to hunt through all these playlists to find the playlist they're looking for. And I would imagine that is kind of daunting after a while. So I don't really want to put you guys through that. This way, this video is one video. If somebody comes back and says, well, where's part 6? I'll just give you the link to the whole series of videos. In the comment sections, I will put a jump list in the comments where you can jump from part 1 to part 2 to part 3 down there. So you can just click to each thing in the jump list and make it very easy for you. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments or anything, just simply comment below. Alright, so just sit back, turn on the video, let it run, and you'll be able to watch the whole series. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Alright, so we're going to take some cuttings off of the fig tree I got here. I don't remember the name of this fig, by the way, because I wrote it down in pen when I planted it, put a marker in there, and I don't see the marker. And even if I did see the marker, it's more than likely blank by now. So I got to find another way to mark these bushes so I know what they are in the future, because marking them with pen seems to be a really bad idea. So anyway, I'm going to take a couple cuttings off of this because it's that time of the year where it's really not going to go much further. Plus, I want to condition this plant for winter, as well as get some of these cuttings and rooted and bring them in for the winter. That way I can give you slight updates on the progress of cuttings. I'm also going to do several different cutting techniques because a bunch of people basically said to do it several different ways, so we're going to try all those ways and see if it matters or makes a difference, or good results, bad results. Either way, we will get results, good or bad. By me cutting this bush basically back down isn't going to kill the plant, because I have mowed these plants, this bush basically back to the ground several times. I have another fig tree. I'm going to take cuttings off of that as well, and I'm going to separate them. I believe they're two different kinds of figs, but I have cutting these down to the ground, and they just keep coming back every year. So the rootstock is really what it's all about. And some people suggest I just dig it up. Yeah, I probably could if everything else fails, but if I could get cuttings to root, I'd be happy with that. All right, and I'll leave this plant with the new owners and let them figure out a way to get it to grow. So let me get some cuttings, and I will be right back, and we'll go from there. Okay, so you can see I have several cuttings. I got 4 from the fig that you see in the first one, and these are from the fig from the other side of my yard. I believe they're both different figs. I don't believe they're the same fig. 2 different varieties. I am going to mutilate these in such a way that they root. But I wanted to show you really quick before I start cutting them up. There's a sap that's running out of them. You can see it's dripping a sap right now. Okay, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but I need to probably get these into water or something relatively quickly. Let's see if we could get these to root, and I'm going to do several different rooting techniques on these that were suggested to me, and we're going to try them all, or most of them anyway, and we're going to see if we can get these to root and bring them in for the winter. I'll give you updates on these as they grow, so you can see if it works, it don't work, or what I'm doing wrong, or whatever. Alright, so I'll be right back. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to use is just simply sticking it in water and letting it root. We're going to see if that basic and simple method is effective for this particular plant in rooting. So as you can see, I stripped off most of the leaves. I left a couple on top, and I took everything else off. I probably should have left all those leaves on, but everybody seems to be saying take them off, you don't want them on there. These leaves look very healthy. What I took off looked very healthy. But we're going to basically root it this way. And this is a technique I use to root my suckers. So if you've never seen me root suckers, I don't think I did any videos on rooting suckers. Alright, so what I do for rooting suckers, you'll notice my greenhouse is filled with these cups. What I do is I then fill it with water, and I take my sucker cuttings and I stick my suckers inside here just like that. Alright, then I wait till it roots. This one just came out of this container, and you can see my sucker has roots on it. Now this is ready to be planted. So I'm going to leave this fig in here, and we're going to let it sit in there until it decides to root. Now there's no rooting hormone in here. It's just straight water inside of a container like you would normally do to get roots from any kind of cutting you get. Okay, so we'll move on to the next technique that was suggested to me, and I will be right back. Okay, so the second technique was told that I should cut this down to a stem with at least 3 nodes. So I've got several nodes on here, plus there's a top with a bud, and so I was told to cut it basically like this. And there's actually 2 techniques for this type of rooting, and one was suggested that you just do this to it and stick it in the soil. You can scarcify the stem, which is, I don't know or feel that's necessary, being the roots will come from the nodes, but you can scarcify the stem. Maybe we'll do that a little bit on the bottom. But this particular technique I'm showing you now is what somebody had specifically suggested to me, and I checked them out, and they seem like they have a little bit of understanding as far as fig trees go specifically. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm simply going to leave it out just like that. That's just going to sit there now until, from what I was told, it gets a callus on the ends. These will dry up and they'll callus. This stick will stay okay like that. I'm going to keep it out of the sun, obviously. But I'm going to let the outsides callus, and the reason why they said to let that do that is because it'll keep this from rotting and getting infected and mold and everything in the soil, because that can happen with cuttings. That's why you want to root these so the roots come out and you're driving energy through that stem up to that point. I will put this in the shade. I could even put it in here for now, you know, just somewhere not directly in sunlight. I can like stick it right there where it's got a pretty good amount of humidity coming off that, and it's not in direct sunlight, so it'll kind of just keep it going there. If it dies or rots there, I'll move it somewhere else or something else. Alright, so that was the second technique. I'll be right back with the third. Okay, so the third technique that I'm being told to do is to simply just cut it like that and stick it in the soil. No rooting hormone. We're just going to stick that in the soil, and we're going to keep that watered under a regular basis, and we're going to see if that roots based on what I was told by somebody specifically. So there's no rooting hormone. I just stick it in the soil. I'm going to water this. You know, I can't do this and film at the same time, but I will water it, and I will keep you up to date on this one. Actually all of them, because these will all come in for the winter, providing they survive the fall or the next several weeks being out here. So I just removed all the stems off it, put it in as low as I can go with it. I did not scarcify the stem, and that's basically it. So we'll water it down, we'll see if it roots up, we'll go from there. I got a feeling this technique's probably not going to work, but it was suggested to me, and I figured I'm going to try it without the rooting hormone, because I was told it doesn't need the rooting hormone, but we're going to try them both ways. I'm going to do one with rooting hormone and without rooting hormone. So hang in there. I'll be right back. See you in a minute. Okay, so in this technique, I believe I'm on the fourth now. I don't even know. In this technique, we're going to do the same thing as the last technique, except we're going to use rooting hormone like this. Alright, and you can see I got it on there pretty good. Why did I put so much of it on there? And make sure it's all the way up, because I'm going to be watering this plant on a regular basis, and that is going to wash off. Now there is one more technique I'm going to try that wasn't suggested to me, but I know it from the old days, my grandmothers and stuff like that, just going back in time a little bit. And the technique that they used was, they used willow to actually get roots to come out of plants. And they would just basically soak the willow branches in the water for a day, and then let that juice come out of the willow branches and leaves and everything. Crush them up, put them in the water, let it soak up. You'll see the water kind of turn color, and then you stick your things that you want to root in that willow branch juice, and the results were always amazing. So we're going to do that, but that's going to have to be on another episode, because I didn't prepare the willow branches in time for me to actually do that, because I didn't think about doing that. I do have 2 more that I should have never cut off just yet, because I was going to do those in the willow juice, but obviously I forget again. So I have to get these into water right away so they don't dry up and die, and then I can do the willow juice. And I'll make that up today. I'll do an update video. I won't make it very long. I'll just show you that I did it, and we can watch the progress and go from the time, date, and stamp and all that good stuff from there. Alright, so that is your rooting system for your figs that everybody had suggested to me on social media and YouTube and everywhere else. Alright, so watch it, enjoy it, follow along, and see how these things go. Any major changes come up with it, if they die, I'll just end that part of the series that it died, and we won't continue on with it, and we'll just go on with the ones that are doing good, and we'll follow their progress. Alright, so I will see you guys on the next one. Take care. I forgot to mention one thing I did do different with the rooting hormone example here is that I did scarcify this stem. I should have showed you me doing it. I just didn't show it, but I scarcified the stem, but I did not scarcify any of the other stems. Okay, so I just want to make that clear that this is the only one that is scarcified. Alright, so I'll see you on the next one. Okay, so this is going to be an update on the fig cuttings that I did all the way back in September, I believe I started doing this. So at this time of the year, I'm pretty sure the plant knows it's going into dormancy between the temperature and the light, so it's generally not going to want to sprout and grow. But nevertheless, what I have noticed is here's some of the results of this experiment. These cuttings right here are the ones that I simply stuck inside the containers with water in them. What I simply did is I just took cuttings like this and I stuck them in water with a, like a soda thing with a lid on it, and I stuck them through the lid thing, and I was growing them that way for a while. They were doing okay while they were outside exposed to steady sunlight and warmer weather. And then once I started bringing them in, I didn't really feel it was necessary to keep them in light. So I decided to keep them in semi-light darkness, not pitch dark, but not in direct sunlight, so to speak. So it had like some kind of ambient lighting getting to it. Since I've done that, I've noticed that all the knobs that you see here started to brown off and harden off and not really give me any sign that they were wanting to grow anymore. They were not doing that good. I realized at some point I need to do something, because they're probably going to die if I continue to leave them in that way that I was leaving them. So I figured at this point what I was going to do is remove them from that cup of water that I had where they were just sitting in that light, okay? And I decided to take them and put them into my fish tank where the temperatures are approximately right there. I don't know if you can see that. Where is it? I don't know, you can't see, but it says approximately 72 degrees. So this water is a constant 72 degrees. It has natural fish flora and bacteria in the tank. So I figured I would keep them in there because I usually have really good success trying to root any kind of plant in my fish tanks. I usually just take a cutting and stick them in my fish tanks, and I get really good rooting results from that. And I don't know if it's because the constant temperature and the water has been basically aged in a sense. It's got fish flora in it and bacteria and stuff, and maybe that all has something to do with roots seeming to want to root better in that environment than just taking either rainwater or sink water and rooting it that way. So I took them out of that container, put them in my fish tank, and this is where we're at now. Now we're starting to see a lot better growth development. In fact, I broke a couple small roots that were starting to actually form on here. Here we are in the first or second of December, and you can see that there's these knobs that form all the way up the stem. Now these are the beginning nodules that are going to come out and eventually form the root once it starts to want to go into a vegetative growth state or a growing state, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there. Maybe get you more in the light here. Okay, so you can see they're starting to come back. It mostly turned black. A lot of the ends died off. But now, since I put it in my fish tank, these roots are starting to pop out again. So that's a very good sign. And this one, of course, is doing the best out of all of them as far as the water test goes, you know, keeping it in water. But anyway, you can see it's getting new nodes, new root stubs. I'll eventually cut some of this off once I see roots coming out of it. Alright, so I wanted to show you that. It still held one of the leaves right here. Okay, it still held one of these leaves on. I leave it on there because I wanted to get some kind of light energy into it to help it grow. And on this stem, you can see I got a node, a bud came out. And that's a good sign. That's telling me once that bud comes out, it's ready to manufacture food from light so it can help produce the roots and the sap it needs to survive. And here's the third one that I stuck in water. This one's doing much better as far as root development goes. The roots are still just little nodules. They're not actually hair roots or anything yet. Okay? And that's the bud. It kept one of the leaves. The reason why it lost the leaves is because I took it out of light, and I almost killed them doing that. But I want to find out what is going on with the plant. Will it survive in darkness? Can I root it in darkness? Does it matter? And so far, as far as my observation goes, is this plant has to have some kind of steady light flow to keep it alive. You can't just root these in complete darkness. So my recommendation is if you are doing rooting, you're going to want to keep it in some kind of light so it can form these buds. And as it forms those buds, it stimulates the rooting growth and everything else. Here's the one. Let me see which one is which here. I didn't label them, but I know which is which. Okay, here's the stem, all right, that I cut and I stuck in the soil that I did not put rooting hormone on it. It's basically dead, okay? But then again, I didn't water it that much, but I knew it was dying anyway. So it's basically a dead stick. Here's the one that I stuck in rooting hormone. And yes, I do have some fungus gnats got in here, and they are spreading. And you can see here, I have a bud. Alright, so there's the bud. Trying to get you in and out of focus here. And that's the bud. Top bud looks like it died, but that's okay, because I also have another bud coming up here. That's okay. So that's a good chance that this is going to live. I got to water this right after this video. So that was the one with the rooting hormone. And here's the third one that I potted. Okay. Okay, so the third one that I potted, It's not throwing out any buds, but the stem is still kind of green, and well, it is throwing out a little bit of a bud right there, and the bud on top is alive, so that's good. That's good. There's a good chance it might throw out leaves, and once it throws out leaves, that means it's in that growing stage, and it needs steady light until spring, so that's going to be a tough challenge to provide that steady light without a timer. That means I have to turn it on and off, and I don't have timers where I'm going to be doing all this. So, but yeah, that's where we're at with this. They're not totally dead. One did die, and that could be because when I went on vacation I didn't water anything, and you can see how dry the soil is. I mean, I just haven't watered any of this really, which is going to get watered right now. So it's probably a good idea to water your cuttings and make sure they're nice and wet so they grow. But either way, I am still having some kind of success. So, alright, so that's just a quick update on the fig cuttings and the results. And I will update you once I get to a point where some leaves come back out and we got some roots going and something to show you, because right now it's still kind of in that state of dormancy from bringing it in and putting it into darkness. And then I may even stratify these plants in cold a little bit, just to get them a little cool, and then I'm going to introduce warm air to it and warmer water and warmer soil, and then maybe we can get this thing to start coming up with leaves. Alright, so that's just a basic update for the fig cuttings, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Alright, so this is going to be my planting update now for the fig tree that I got growing in my tank. And as you can see, the root system developed quite well for this plant, for this fig tree. And I just want to show you the roots while they're in the tank. And you can see they're quite well. You see they got brown. Some of that is probably from the diatomic algae, the brown algae that kind of sometimes forms in these tanks. So it's probably that, but it's not hurting the plant at all. And if anything, it's kind of coating it and protecting the roots. But the root system is quite extensive. I didn't want it to get that big. I just haven't had time, like usual, to get to it. And I just really didn't pay attention to it too much. But yeah, it's rooted up pretty good. And if you look right there, you can see there's already a shoot underwater. There's a shoot coming out of one of the stems. Okay, so that's a little strange to me. I kind of didn't expect that. But yeah, there's a shoot coming up right there. Let me see if I can focus you in there. Alright, so there's a shoot coming up. It's underwater. It's growing perfectly fine underwater, which I find absolutely bizarre. But yeah, it's growing underwater. And the root system looks pretty well established. So we are going to get ready to plant that. And I just want to show you. You can see that it's got some leaves over here. There's a few. I still got some of those indoor aphid things. And I'll wash all this off and try to get these aphids off there. You don't really see them on here, but there's a few here and there. And but really not bad at all. So let me go in. I got to take this whole thing down and all that. I got to get these out of here because I can't pull them out like I did before. Because before they didn't have roots on them. And they're actually growing into my filter, those roots, it looks like, over there. So I'm going to pull these out, and then I got to get a pot of dirt. I'm going to probably go with the 5-gallon bucket, and I got to get the whole thing set up. So just hang out. I'll be right back, and we'll show you planting them. So just give me a few minutes, and I'll see you just on the other side. Alright, so I'm going to do a fig update now. I just did an update on the rambutan seeds that are growing. So now I got to do a fig update, and just want to show you where we are at with the figs. Now this one was planted directly into the soil, and I kind of just did that because I figured everybody was telling me that these little skinny little fig twigs will not take. Every single person was saying the same thing. They will not take, they will not take, they will not take, and so on and so on. Now I believe this was the little fig twig that I cut off, and I used a rooting hormone on it. So it may have took, they might be right that they normally don't take. Well, the other one died, so we lost one of the fig experiments. But this one lived, and it's obviously growing because you can see a nice little, stem coming up out of there. So the little one lived, and it's growing with the rambutan. And I know I got to separate them, but I'm not. I'll probably wait until spring, or it gets a little warmer. All the pots and everything I left outside are all frozen, and I got to deal with that now. So I could bring them in and let them thaw out for a week, I guess. Yeah, that's the one fig. This was the one fig cutting from, if you go back to my first videos where I discuss all the 4 ways I'm going to do it. And this is the one with the rooting hormone that did take, and it is growing. And it's from a little twig. Most people said that'll never take, and it did take. So I'm not saying that they're wrong. Their input is always good, but never say never, because it can happen. So it doesn't hurt to try. So yes, I do have a fig cutting growing from the little twig with the rooting hormone. Now I am going to show you the others that I still have in my tank, that I still got to get them in the pots like yesterday was supposed to be done. I keep putting it off. I keep having other things to deal with, so I've been putting it off. So that's something I got to deal with right now. So let me bring you over to the tank where the fig cuttings are that are growing within my fish tank. So I'll be right back. Hang in there. Okay, so this is the second time I'm actually shooting this video. I shot this video about a week ago. Didn't have time to come back and take care of it because there's other things I need to do around the house. Here we are. This is the roots coming out of the fig cuttings. This is looking quite well. I might include a clip from the older video I shot about a week or a week and a half ago that I shot from this, that I just simply didn't upload it because I didn't plant it, and I was waiting to get a pot in here to plant it, and I forgot to get the pot, and it's still sitting in here basically. But I'm kind of not in a rush to take this out of this tank because this is acting like a nitrogen sink, and it's really soaking up some major nutrients in this tank. And I know I got a nutrient problem in this tank, and I've always had a nutrient problem in this fish tank because of the type of algae that grow in it. So this thing is really soaking up the nitrates and nitrites and the ammonia that comes from the fish and the breakdown of plant matter and things. It's really doing a great job of consuming the nutrients. I may consider taking fig cuttings in the future just for the roots that come in there and literally soak up all those nutrients in the tank. I might just do it for that purpose. So yes, I know I got to get these into a pot. I will do a small video update of me actually planting these out and describing to you which one's which. I remember what they are. It's kind of hard to explain on here because everything is. But these are the figs that I cut the branches and I stuck them in those cups with the water. Remember those drinking cups? I stuck them in there with the, just sitting in the water. That's what these were. And they went into a state of dormancy, like a winter state of dormancy, and they were just didn't do anything. They didn't do anything until I stuck them in this fish tank, and I gave it a regular amount of light every day. It lost basically all its leaves, and I started giving it regular light. And as soon as I done that, these things started to grow unbelievably. So you can see there's actually a stem that came from the growing upwards onto my filter, coming up, getting ready to break out of water. It's growing off of one of the cuttings, and it's growing upwards, and it wants to come and surface to the water. This plant is obviously perfectly comfortable growing underwater, which is a very interesting characteristic. I did not, I just didn't think this was a immersible plant in any way, shape, and form. So I'm under the impression it's similar to willow. Willow, you can take willow branches like I do and stick them in your pond, and the willow branches absorb all the nutrients out of your pond from the fish waste. And those roots will keep the pond basically running clear and clean and healthy. And so now that I know that this plant kind of has that attribute where it likes to keep its roots wet and in the water and grow like this, I may be doing fig cuttings for my nitrogen sinks in my ponds in the future. I just figured I'd show you that. You might find that interesting, that it's actually growing underwater. You can see, I'll do it again, right there. You see that stem? It's been growing in there for a couple of weeks now. Underwater. Alright, so yes, this plant does have the characteristics that it's an immersible plant. In other words, the plant will live underwater for a certain period, and it's going to shoot something up above water eventually. So this plant will live in a swampy type of environment. For fish hobbyists, or people involved in ecology and things like that, they would refer to that as immersed plants. You have submerged plants, immersed plants, and then you have land plants like trees that grow on your front lawn. Those are dry plants. They will not live in water for the most part. Some plants will live 50% in the water, and the other half will live above the water. That's an immersed plant. And submerged type plants are like these. They will live completely underwater, 100%, and thrive. Now that plant right there, which is Anubias, will grow out of water or in water. It'll grow either way. So it's kind of a freak of a nature, that one. But these are doing fine. Again, these are just the cuttings that I took from my fig that I just stuck in a cup. Everything else died. Nothing else made it. Just the ones that I cut and put in the water, and then they weren't doing nothing. Then I put them in here, gave it regular light, and the nutrients in the tank and stuff like that helped feed it, and now the roots are unbelievably coming out of it. It doesn't seem like the root system's developing anymore, so we're as far as we can go as far as the roots go. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me to try to plant this now. I may have to root prune a lot of this off, so I don't know if that's going to kill it. So I might root prune one of them. The other ones I'm probably just going to plant just the way they are, and we'll see how they go. So I got 1, 2, 3 to go. I got 3 to do, and they're growing quite well. It looks like they're getting ready to actually put out figs, to tell you the truth. Here's the buds. All right, some of the buds are just, they're doing all right. All right. Here's the tops. You can see some of the stems are literally growing. It's doing fine. I'm going to use these in the future as a nitrogen sink for my fish tanks, because those extra nutrients, that's something that can grow like this and suck those extra nutrients up. They help control the balance of your fish tank. So they also work very well in the pond. So a future experiment for me with this plant is to cut a stem piece like that, get it to root, and then completely immerse it and see how long it'll live underwater completely. Now, I may be able to take this plant and make it a completely immersible type of a plant. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it. We're going to find out, though. And that might be an interesting thing for anybody who's an aquarist, might be interested in doing that for aquatic purposes. It might change its structure when it's completely submerged and yet survive. I don't know. It may be a portion of it has to be above water to live, and that's the only reason why that stem is growing. I don't know. I just know it's doing what it's doing, and I am sharing those results with you. That's just an update on the figs. I'll do another update once I get to the planting and the pots and things like that. Alright, a quick update on one of my figs. Anyway, the other ones I'm going to get planting those today. I'll do a separate video when I actually plant them. But here's an update on the one of the figs stems that I planted. This is the one that had the rooting hormone. It was a very small stem. Most people said it wasn't going to grow, but it's growing. It's growing fine in the pot. It's sharing a pot right now with the one of the Rambutans that survived, which I didn't think was going to live. But you can see over here, that's the stem right there. All right, that's the small stem, and it shot off a nice little branch. It's coming up beautifully. It's growing great. Yeah, that thing's got to be close to 10 inches now tall, so it'll be perfect for spring. Once spring comes, I can get this thing outside. But that's just a quick update on the figs. The fig cutting, this is going to be the cutting with the rooting hormone, the very small branch. See, it was a very small branch. It did make it. It is growing. All right. That's it. I'll do an update, like I say, on the other fig cuttings once I get them potted and soiled. Maybe I'll do that today or tomorrow. We'll see. I got a lot of things going on, so. All right, so this is an update on the figs. These are the 3 figs that I had. There's only 1 fig plant that died so far. Actually 2. One died straight out the gate. Somebody told me to just take a stem and leave it out and dry, and then let the stem become really calloused or whatever you want, and then plant it. And I did that, and it never took. It died pretty much shortly after I did what they suggested. So that didn't work. And the only other one that died, I believe, was the one that I scarcified the stem, but I didn't add the root hormone to it. So that one died. But all the rest of these so far lived. Now, these are the ones that were sitting in my fish tank the entire winter. Yes, they got a little yellow because they were running out of nutrients. But now that I got them in this pot, they seem to started getting green right away. I gave them a little Epsom salt too. And they're coming back, and they're looking good. They're doing fine. And, you know, here's the other one that you've been seeing. I've been showing you the updates on that. Yeah, these other ones are fine. They're a little yellow. I'm going to probably try to transplant these somewhere in the greenhouse or something for the winter time, because I'm not going to pot all of these. I'm only going to bring one of them in a pot so I can bring it in the winter and see if it'll grow throughout the winter and whatnot. But so far, yeah, so far they're doing good. So far they didn't die. You do got to water these quite often when they're coming out of, like, the way I was doing it in the fish tank. You want to kind of pretty much keep these things watered every day. You want to make sure that that soil is really wet. And then after a while, when these get a little green, you start to see some growth on them. You could slow down on the water. You know, water them every couple of days, once a week or whatever. And then they'll be fine. But when they're coming out of that wet tank environment, or they're coming out of, you know, you're rooting it from the water, you want to give it time for the roots to adapt to the soil. But so far so good. Not much, you know, a little bit of leaf crinkle, and that's because they were kind of locked up downstairs in that fish tank with fluorescent bulbs and whatnot like that. But they're doing fine. All right, so that was just an update on the figs. So this is an update to the figs that I was growing, and I did a small series on rooting fig cuttings. So I figured I would give you a update on the plants and how they're doing and how things are going. And there's not much to update other than the plants are alive. And I kept them in pots because I really don't know what else to do with them. Because the reason why I did all of this to begin with is because they don't grow good in this climate up here, and because of that reason, you have to grow them in some kind of pots and bring them indoors so the stem part doesn't die. I don't care about the leaves. We just don't want the stem to die. And if the stem dies, that means it's got to grow from the root system back up and grow big enough to be able to produce a stem large enough to produce fruit, and it doesn't work up here. So not with this particular variety of fig, and I'm not 100% sure what variety this is until I can get fruit off it. I'm not going to be able to fully know. So I don't remember which one it was when I bought it. But just wanted to show you how it was doing. Now that stem grew quite big. That was a tiny little cutting. And it grew quite big. It did very, very well. I mean, it's grown in a very small pot. So this is definitely coming in. Now, the other cuttings, I'm going to show you in a second, but the other cuttings I am not going to bring in. I'm going to leave them out for the winter, and I'm going to seal up the pot so it doesn't evaporate moisture, because I'm not going to be able to come out and water it. So the other ones I'm going to leave out. Just going to bring this one in. I'm going to put it in a larger pot, and so on and so on and so on. But you can see it's doing quite well. Now, it's not growing really huge, and I really don't want it to grow real huge because I may have to take this with me when I move, and I need it small, so I don't want to have to cut it if I don't need to. But it's got a nice size stem on it, as you can see. Look at that, gorgeous. It's, you know, finger-wise, it's about as thick as my index finger. And you can see it's very healthy. It's very nice green leaves, nothing to complain about. And it's got a little bud on the top. And I'm not sure what the part of it is going to look, what the figs are going to look like, in other words, I really don't know. Some people tell me they come out of here. But I don't think I'm going to see figs off of this for this year anyway. Maybe next year we'll get some figs off of this, because we're going to keep it alive, put it in a larger pot, we'll bring it in, and we'll give it low light, and we'll see if we can winter it over without it shedding all its leaves, and we'll try to get this thing to make figs next year. All right, so that's that one. That's one of the 4 that survived. I think I did 4 cutting. I did 4 cutting systems, and they all lived. Only 3 of them survived, and one of them died, and I forgot which one died. I think it was the one without the rooting hormone. You'd have to go back and look at the past videos I did on this, and I tell you which one didn't make it. But here's the other 3. Now, one or 2 of these plants, I had 2 cuttings of each, so it doesn't matter which one they were. It was just the one root cutting system that didn't work that was suggested to me. Actually, there were two of them that didn't make it. One of them was, somebody told me to cut the stem and then let the stem dry out for a couple of days and then plant it. That's what they told me, because it's less likely to get disease. That didn't work at all, so I don't recommend you do that. I just stuck these basically in water. They started putting out, it took them a while to put out roots, but when they finally did put out roots, they just started growing and growing. You could see in my last couple episodes, I've been growing these in my fish tank throughout the winter, and they were growing fine in the fish tank. They were very happy in there, in fact. But let's show you the rest of these plants now. This is one of the cuttings right here. That's one plant. And over here, you can see down below, one of the main stems died back, but in this shoot put out a new shoot from the root system, and it looks like it's gonna, it's got a little bud coming up right there, so it's gonna put out another shoot. So don't worry about it. As long as if one part of the plant is alive, you're okay, you know. Here's another plant back here. It's one of the other cuttings. That's doing fine. It actually looks like, wait a minute. I don't know. That's coming out of... That's all coming out of one stem, I think. This is one stem. That's this main stem here. Part kind of died off, but the root grew bigger, and it just put all these stems out. I thought there were 4 in here. Guess not. Here's another one. This one here. You can see it put out a stem. Here's a stem. Here's the main stem. And it looks like it's going to... See, it put out another little stem over there. So it's growing. It's growing perfectly fine. And of course, there's this one in the back. Right there. I'm wiggling it. And that one's growing nicely. Nice and big and thick and good. And it's going to look good. Hopefully it makes it through the winter. In fact, I'm sure it'll make it through the winter. It's just the main stem might die on it. And unfortunately, I can't bring this in because I have a lot of these pepper plants that I need to bring in for the winter to keep them fruiting so I can get some fruits to do a review of it. But that's just a general look at the figs that I started from cuttings, and generally all those systems will work, I guess, is my final conclusion. You just cut the stem, as you've seen that I did. You just cut yourself a stem, stick it in a cup of water, and just let it root itself out. And eventually, once they start rooting, plant it. Now, don't do like I did in my fish tank, and I left it in the fish tank for, God, months, right? Pretty much the whole winter. I don't recommend you do that. I only did that because they were growing well. I didn't really want to plant them in soil yet. And they were soaking up all the nutrients out of my fish tank, which is good. That's what I wanted to do. So I figured I'd just leave them there and not bothering me. But I don't recommend doing that. But once you start seeing roots come out in the water, just plant it and you're good. It's a very easy plant to root. There's really nothing complicated about it. So that's it. Now, as far as the variety goes, I don't remember what variety this is. I'd have to look for a tag that I bought the figs from. I don't remember if I bought these from Lowe's. I'd have to look. I need to look in my information as to what kind of figs I bought, because it's been, I don't know, 5-6 years since I bought these already, and they've never gotten figs off them because they never get big enough for them to produce fruit. The stem above ground always dies when spring comes. Always dies. It lives through the winter, but when spring comes, the whole stem dies and it puts up a whole new stem. Been doing that every year. So yeah, they're cold hardy to that point, but they're not cold hardy enough to keep the main stem alive. That was why I did all of that, and I wanted to pot it. But it turns out that you can cut, like if you want multiple trees on your property from figs and you like it, just cut the stem and stick them in water and let them root, and you're good to go. All right, so I figured I'll do an update on this. I wasn't going to really do any more videos about this, but I may as well, because this is actually kind of funny and it's pretty interesting too. So anyway, this is the last of the cuttings that I've saved and managed to keep alive from the fig cuttings that I did. And I've done a small series on the figs cuttings, and I wanted to show people how your figs cuttings will do. And so basically over here is a pot that I planted them in for the winter and tried to winter them over up here in the pot, and they just simply didn't winter over. They just died, and there's nothing but the stem is left on the bottom. So they didn't do good in the winter in a pot in the greenhouse, mainly because they just simply, the roots couldn't get enough water to stay alive. And let me just quickly show you the figs outside. Okay, so that's my fig outside. Okay, and you can see this thing's getting bigger and bigger every year, but it just doesn't, it has to put up new wood every year, and that's just simply why it doesn't fruit. So it's more or less ornamental at this point, but you can see the size of this thing. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger every year. It's just growing. Now this will live up here this far north in the ground, and I've had people suggest to me, you know, cover it with leaves and insulate it, and no matter what you do, those branches die. They just can't handle 10 below zero weather up here. When we get 10 below in the winters, just can't handle it. So they die, and then it has to put up new wood. So this wood has to come up every year. So it's just not, it needs to have old wood for at least 1 year that's alive for it to put out fruit. It's just not going to put fruit out like this. So this is where I got most of my cuttings. I do have another fig tree that's towards the top of my property, but that one is never grew anything. It just stayed small like a little bush, dies every year. It does the same thing. But this is the one that comes up in, when does this come up? This comes up like, I'll start seeing shoots come up in like maybe June or July. So, you know, roughly around mid-July, I start seeing the shoots come up, and that's when, you know, it starts growing. But if it was to come up earlier, I might have much taller trees, and I might be able to get fruit off it. So that is the figs that I have that are in the ground, and that's about how, I'll give you a backup view of it. That's about how big they get. You know, you could compare that to the fence post. So let me just show you the one in the greenhouse. Now this one in the greenhouse was from the cutting, and it's pretty much stayed alive, like an evergreen, I guess you can say. And it never really sheds. It sheds leaves, but there's always some kind of foliage on it at some, you know. But here it is, and you can see how big this fig tree got in my greenhouse. And this whole tree is literally growing out of this little tiny pot right here. This pot here, I can probably get two of my fists inside that pot. I don't know what that would be, a half a quart. But you can see how large the stem is on this. Now this thing is absolutely huge, growing out of that little pot. Now yes, I know the roots came out, and the roots probably go all the way down to here. So Not really sure how to deal with this because I'm not bringing a tree in my house for the winter. I can cut it down and put it in a small pot and bring it in, but I am not bringing this entire plant in my house for the winter. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing would die and peel off its leaves anyway. It's not going to live in a house. It's just simply not going to do that. But it did get really huge. All right, this thing grew a massive amount this year. This year put out the most growth I've probably ever seen any of my fig trees up this far north grow. And it just grew absolutely enormous. I mean, you can see how huge a stem is in here. For a little tiny pot, I mean, this is ridiculous. And it's all the way pressed up against the greenhouse, the ceiling of the greenhouse. So I'd have to say this thing's probably close to 10 feet tall right now. And maybe not that tall. Maybe not that tall. Probably about 8 feet, though. You know, between the pot and there. It's probably at least 8 feet. But I'm not bringing an 8-foot tree in my house for the winter, and it's just simply not going to happen. So what I'm going to end up having to do with this fig tree is cut it like halfway, repot it, keep a couple of live branches on it, and then just maybe find somewhere in the house to put it for the winter. I don't know. I don't know what else to do. I don't really... I'm trying to sell my house, so I really don't want to clutter it up with trees and pots and stuff, even though I'm going to be bringing a lot of these plants in for the winter. So I'm going to have to deal with it somehow. You know, I also have to bring this in too. Not that this video is about this, but this is the Tamarillo, the dwarf Tamarillo. This thing grew into a massive tree. I mean, this thing literally is over 10 feet. You can see this thing's just absolutely enormous. Puts out tons of fruit. It's putting out so many fruit I can't even eat them all. They're just falling on the floor. But I do want to bring this in and try to keep this alive at least for one more season. Hopefully the house sells next year, and then I can get out of here and I can start looking for a piece of property. And then I have something to christen the property with, which would be my ginkgo biloba tree. I can bring the fig tree that I have here. And, you know, I might possibly be able to bring the Tamarillo tree with me. But it's just gotten really big, and I really got to really play my cards out as to how I want to actually do this. Now, I might cut some of these branches off, some of the greener branches, and keep them in my fish tank over the winter, and then get them to root, and then I'll have fresh clippings and you know, cuttings with roots on it that I can either bring with me or I can plant them out next year. Not that it's going to do any good around here, because these trees never live green long enough for it to produce figs. It's just a little bit too cold for it. If we get like a warm winter, it might live and the wood won't die and it'll actually produce fruit. But if the wood dies, you're done. You can't, that old wood's got to be able to survive the freezing cold weather up here. So, and it would probably almost survive in the greenhouse. The problem with the greenhouse is it gets too dry in here, and I'm not coming out here walking through 2 and 3 feet of snow to come out with a 5-gallon bucket of water to do that once a week. It's just not, I'm just not going to do that, you know. And I shut my water off in the winter, so when I shut my water off, I have no water out here. So it's a very unfortunate situation, you know. And I really don't want. I want this thing to grow and stay green, but I can't. It's just not going to grow here. So anyway, that's just a quick update on my fig tree. I'll include it as part of the series to the fig update, but just wanted to show you that the cuttings, after they become established, they will start to take off. They're just going to keep growing, and you can see how big they will get. And this thing got big very quickly, so you can go from the cuttings to a tree this size within a couple years and basically start producing fruit within 3 years, I would imagine, maybe even sooner if you put it in the right kind of pail. I mean, I did not plan on growing this thing up here like this, just so you know. I just put it up here because it was a little fig tree. It was overwintered, and I just wanted it to just stay here because I was selling the house, and I'm probably going to have to move them. So I didn't even think I was going to leave all this stuff here. So I left it there. I didn't think it would get this big. I really didn't. Now this thing got absolutely enormous, and I'm just not sure how and what to do with it at this point. So I've really got to think it out, but it's something that, you got to consider when you're growing a fig tree like this, especially from the cuttings. it's going to get big. Maybe might get big really fast. So really plan it out. Don't do what I did. I just simply didn't. I was kind of careless about it, and now the thing's a monster, and now I got to deal with it. And so I guess that's just the way it's going to be, you know, for now anyway. But yeah, that's just a quick update on the fig tree. No figs on it, no flowers, no nothing. Just what you see is what it is. And if I get any developments, or if I decide to prune it back and bring it in, maybe I'll shoot another video and I'll just give you another update on it. But this is the last of the fig tree cuttings I got left. And the other ones died really because I just neglected them. It's just, I'm in a situation where I can't move all these plants anymore. I need to be able to grow in either a heated greenhouse or a terrarium, or what do they call it? An arboretum or something. I got to do something different. I can't keep bringing trees and plants in and out of here. It's too much work for me. And it's too much stress on the plants. So I'm working on that now. Hopefully I can get something established. And then at some point I can, you know, do this more on a permanent basis where it grows year-round without me having to do anything. And then I'm established. So future plans are coming. So we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, this is just a quick update on this fig tree. And like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one.